Next episode of Simon Says, Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, Al Simon, with Sandler, and the show, Let's Talk Business, on Business RadioX is all about smart, high-performing business professionals. And so our listeners are here because you want to sharpen your skills, you want to learn new ideas and concepts, you want to share best practices, and you want to get to know really smart people. And I've got two really smart people as guests today. So you're going to want to take notes, listen carefully. And at the end of each segment, we'll make sure that they share their contact information, so you'll want to make sure you get that so that you can connect with these folks, engage with them, take advantage of their services. And as always, we'll conclude our show with a sales tip from me in our Ask Al segment. So let's start with Shawna Woods, the managing partner of Atlanta Divorce Law Group. Welcome, Shawna.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. As I was telling you before the show, divorce is all over my family. And in fact, my wife and I are the only ones that haven't been divorced. Of all my, I got two sisters and one brother, and also my parents. And so I know the effect it can have on people. So I'm curious about what you're doing there at Atlanta Divorce Law Group, especially when you talk about you're helping individuals and families manage the emotional struggles of facing an uncertain future. That's awesome.
You know, that's one of the biggest things when you talk about a dynamic that's about to change, especially in family law. Yeah. You can't get more to the heart of an issue than when you're talking about your family and your family suddenly changing, right? And when you have children and you're going through a divorce, it is still remaining a family, but it's the uncertainty of what does this look like for us post-divorce. And coming through a divorce like your parents did and your siblings did, it can be very traumatic and hard to deal with. And so one of the things that we do at the Atlanta Divorce Law Group is try to lessen that impact in the legal system so that you can go on about recreating what this new life looks like for you.
Nice. Now, so you've got this thing that you call the happily ever after. Let me try that again. Happily ever after divorce.
Absolutely.
So it's like a program, or it's a what is it?
Really, the start of it was happily ever after divorce. Poked a little fun on happily ever after because that's what we were all raised on, right? You grow up, you find the love of your life, you get married, and then that's it. You live happily ever after. They don't really talk about the hard work, right, that goes into making a marriage work and making it stay. So we do poke a little fun at that idea of happily ever after, but also the idea that we want to remove the stigma of having a divorce, right? Most of our clients have given it all. They've gone through marriage therapy, they've gone through therapy themselves, and they reach that point where, unfortunately, this relationship is not going to go forward as a marriage. And really finding your happiness, right, in whatever avenue that looks like for you is what we encourage. Okay. Everyone deserves to be happy.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And, of course, we've all seen the billboards all over the place about, this law firm, that law firm that can handle your divorce and take that guy for every penny he's worth. I mean, we see all that kind of stuff. And because of my background, I've often thought about, what about the kids, right? Yeah. What about the future of all that? And so what makes Atlanta Divorce Law Group, can we just say ADLG for short?
Absolutely, okay. ADLG.
Okay, what makes ADLG different?
So when you look at what we represent and you go to our website, you really see our goals and our missions. And one of the things that I talk about is being of integrity, not just, to ourselves, but to our clients. I was just talking to a potential client this morning, and it's a custody case over some very young children. I said, okay, well, here's some likely outcomes that are going to happen in court, and any competent attorney is going to be able to tell you that. They may or may not. Right? They may say, yes, let's go for it. Let's get in there and fight. But the reality is, here's what's likely to happen in court. And then I end it by looking at them and saying, do you want to start a co-parenting relationship by eviscerating each other in court? Sometimes it's necessary. There are moments when it is necessary to go to the mat, which is going to court. Most of the time, if we're talking about co-parenting, we're talking about child custody, The best resolutions happen at the negotiation table.
Outside the courtroom.
Outside the courtroom.
And you're there for them?
Absolutely. That's giving them the advice, right? We can go and do this, right? We can go to court, and knowing when to, as I think it was Kenny Rogers, know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right?
Yes.
Know when to say that what's on the table is my worst day in court, then yes, we're probably going to court, right? And we have the ability to do that. But also approaching it as, we want to get out of this situation with the least emotional damage for the parties involved, right? And that includes the kids, right? Yeah. It really does include coming up as someone who's my parents were divorced twice from each other. So I was a parent. I was a child of divorce, and knowing and coming out of that, how to properly advise clients, not just on the legal system, but taking a step back and saying, why don't we talk about it from a realistic standpoint about how this looks like for you post-divorce?
And hence, a better idea of how to get to happily ever after.
How to get to happily ever after and co-parenting.
Yeah, very good. I love that. It's, it just has to have, it's got to be more than money, right? It's got to be more than money. It's got to be about quality of life. So, all right. Now, I'm a small business owner. Billy is a small business owner. And although your business is not so small anymore, as we'll find out here in a little bit, Billy. But I think about, people who are business owners and they have these kinds of events in their lives. How do you protect a small business in a divorce situation?
Absolutely, and we deal with a lot of small business owners. The first thing I tell them is, it's probably too late, but get a prenuptial agreement, right? That's the easiest and best way not only to protect a business, but really to kind of outline what are your ideas about what it looks like for the both of you financially moving forward in the event that this doesn't work out. In regard to small business owners in particular, a divorce can devastate a small business.
I can imagine.
If it is not done in a protective manner.
Right.
Georgia is what we call an equitable division state, not necessarily an equal division state.
Okay, what's the difference?
Equitable means what's fair. Equal, of course, means 50-50.
Everybody gets half. Okay.
Right. So a lot of times everybody says, well, 50-50 is fair. But when we're talking about a small business, it may or may not be, right? Because when you've put all your heart, all your soul into growing this particular business, taking out half the value may completely devastate the business, and you're not able to earn income, right, moving forward. So it's a way of looking at it where it's not just reaching into every account and pulling it apart. We want to put this together as a puzzle piece, and that's why we work with our forensic accountants. This is why we work with our CPAs. This is why we work as a whole. We're a lawyer, but we're going to bring in the other experts to be able to represent our clients in the best way possible. Nice.
So I think you may have already answered this, but I would like to ask, what should a person look for in a divorce attorney? You already explained why ADLG is different, but is that a different question?
It may be. Okay. First of all, I tell people, find somebody who you trust, right? Go in and do the consultation. I like it when people say, I'm going to shop around. Absolutely. Please do. You're going to be with your attorney about 6 months to a year. You're going to need to trust that person and trust their advice. Right? Yes. Secondly, find about their experience. Have they represented small business attorneys or owners before? Have they been successful in both negotiation and in trial? And then the last thing that I tell people, ask people how much of their practice is litigation. Because if they're telling you 50% of my practice in divorce law is litigation, you might want to run because they're pushing those cases to litigation. Okay. Good question. Yeah. So how much of what percentage of your practice is litigation? I would tell you, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And our answer, quite frankly, is 80% of cases should and do settle without having to go to a final hearing. Okay. That's what we call an amicable divorce, maybe?
or more so?
An amicable ending.
Is there such thing as amicable ending? That would be good too. Yeah.
I think that there's an approach called the amicable approach, which I'm all a fan of, approaching it in a way that's not eviscerating the other side.
Right.
However, you always have to have that attorney who has the ability to walk into the court system, because if you don't, then you have all carrot and no stick.
Okay. All right, that's great advice. So ADLG, you told me you have several offices, right, all over Metro Atlanta?
Yes, we've served the greater Metro Atlanta area.
Okay.
We have our main office in Alpharetta, and we have an office in Johns Creek and Buckhead and in Marietta.
Nice. Okay. And you're active in those communities.
Absolutely.
You sponsor things like what?
Absolutely. So there's several different things that we do sponsor. One of the things that we give to anyone, you don't have to be a client, you don't have to even let us know you exist. There is a support group that we have hired a therapist to host once a month. Anybody can join. It's on the web, on our website, and it's virtual. So
really?
You can be anonymous or you can participate as much as you want to. And it's a support group for people who are transitioning families, right? Either divorce or child custody or even adoption.
What a great service. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've got attorneys that sit on these webinars and these calls, and
so not on the support group. No attorneys attend that. That's all just your therapist that we have hired for you guys, and we have a support group that gets together about once a month. Other than that, we do give webinars about once a month. Often I'm on there or another one of the attorneys at the office. And just advice in general, and whether one of the popular ones is divorcing a narcissist, because everybody thinks they're married to one.
Okay, I'm not gonna bring that up with my wife. I'm not doing that.
Not touching that one. Hotline 123.
Billy's wife on line 1. Oh man, that's awesome that you're doing that. That's really helpful. That's good stuff. So. We're talking, this is Al Simon with Sandler, and this is Simon Says Let's Talk Business on Business RadioX. We've been talking with Shawna Woods, the managing partner of Atlanta Divorce Law Group, ADLG. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's the one. Atlanta Divorce Law Group, ADLG. Before we go on, is there a way that our listeners can contact you? What's the best way to contact you or your firm?
Absolutely. So you can always give us a call at 678-203-9893. You can contact our website at the AtlantaDivorceLawGroup.com. And we have just recently launched our podcast, the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast.
Good name for a podcast.
It is a great name. Our first one talks about toxic relationships and identifying those toxic relationships. So you can contact us at any of those. We'll be happy to answer your questions.
Nice. Okay, so let me read that back to you. So the phone number for your firm is 678-203-9893.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the website is AtlantaDivorceLawGroup.com.
You got it.
Okay. And that's where they can find out about the podcast.
Put in Happily Ever After Divorce, and you'll find us.
Find it that way. All right, excellent. That's great. Well, Shawna, thank you for being with us. A couple other questions I'd like to ask. One is, what's the best advice you've ever received?
It may sound a little corny, but it was a Court of Appeals judge out in New Mexico, where I'm from, and he had a bumper sticker that I thought was absolutely true and wonderful, and it said, "Trust your neighbors and brand your cattle."
Trust your neighbors. Brand your cattle. Okay, I like that.
And I've been trying to figure that one out for a really long time, but I do think it was pretty good advice back then.
I think it'd be easier to trust your neighbors if your cattle are branded.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's where it goes. I don't know. You could probably take that a couple different ways. Yeah. And then, Shawna, what's the best advice you can give our listeners?
For any listeners that are not yet married, I will tell you honestly, I think the best marriages are predicated on prenuptial agreements because you have these wonderful conversations about what do you expect to do with your finances while you're still in that lovey-dovey, let's get married mode, instead of that mode of, I'm really sick of you and I'm going to tear apart everything you did. Yeah. So as a divorce attorney, I'm a huge fan of prenuptial agreements.
Are you? Okay. Yeah, it's probably true, right? That most marriages, money is maybe the biggest issue, right?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
A disagreement or a misunderstanding about who wants to save, who wants to spend, and where do we spend our money.
Yeah. That may be why my marriage is in good shape, because I don't even see the money. I assume there's money. But in the business and on my personal side, Sherry handles it all, and there's money supposedly coming in, supposedly money going out. I don't ever see it. It makes for a peaceful marriage.
The two of you agree on it? That's fantastic.
So I guess I better brand the cattle though, because I got to trust the wife.
That's right.
Shawna, thank you so much. This has been Shawna Woods with us here, the managing partner of Atlanta Divorce Law Group. And Simon Says, Let's Talk Business. And so now our second guest is a guy I've known for a while, client of ours, Billy Van Eaton, the CEO and owner and founder, right, of Cumberland Landscape Group. So, Billy, welcome.
Thanks, Al. I'm so glad to be here.
And it's been long overdue. I don't know why I didn't have you on the show years ago.
I'm sure the email got lost somewhere in spam or something. Who knows? But no, it's great. I love Al and Sherry, and you guys have been great for our organization.
Well, likewise. We enjoy working with you and your team, and you're an excellent company. So let's get right into it. At Cumberland Landscape Group, one of the largest privately owned landscaping companies in Atlanta, right? And you've got like 170 people now.
170 team members, yeah. So we've grown a lot over the years. We had
awesome.
13 when we started.
All right, and you still do just commercial, right?
We do both. We do commercial. We have like 4 different divisions right now. We do commercial maintenance for large kind of corporate campuses or hotels like we're at right now, or apartment complexes, HOAs. We also do design build for like large residential backyards or front yards. We do a lot of hardscape work and stone work on those projects. We have a commercial construction division that does landscape construction. So if you think about a big hospital going up, they need a huge landscape job done that's more than just putting plants in the ground. It involves grading, sometimes concrete, pavers, irrigation, drainage, very complicated. And so we have that division as well. And then we have a turf care division that does your weed control and your fertilization to keep the grass looking green.
So you've come a long way since what, 2011?
2011, yeah. That's when we started.
So how did you come to start the business in 2011?
It's kind of a crazy story. I mean, I'd started a few companies before doing commercial demolition work. We go into commercial spaces and blow out walls or ceilings or floors. I have no idea why we were doing that, but that's just what we did. Yeah. And I was in banking in my first life, and honestly, I was in real estate in 2008 and 9 and got fired. And it was a terrible experience, and I ended up working at Ace Hardware over at West Paces Ferry in 75. And I was working there and tutoring a kid in Spanish, and this guy, Steve, from my church started mentoring me. And through this kind of informal process came to this a kind of realization that I think I want to go buy a company, but I don't have any money to buy a company. I don't know how to buy a company, but I feel like this is what I need and want to do, and it's kind of the gift set God's given me, and I want to go use this. And so kind of thought, let's go try it. I was very single at the time. I think if I had a wife at the time, my wife would have said, no chance. This is not going to work.
Speaking of money, there is no money.
Yeah, that's right. There is no money.
In fact, we're in debt.
That was in 2009, and spent about 2 years learning how to buy a business. And we bought a really small company that had about 13 people, and we've been able to grow it since then.
That is a great story. Crazy story. You're right. It's crazy.
Crazy story.
Why would you do that?
And I threw away my vest from Ace Hardware, which I really hate. That is the best Halloween outfit, and it is gone. So I need to get on Amazon and find one.
Okay. Wasn't it red?
Red, yeah.
Red, yeah.
Red with my name tag, Billy, and it was great.
Yeah, ask me any question.
Yeah, I was not very good. I'd always go ask for help. I mean, there are so many screws and bolts. It's very confusing. So,
all right. So 2009, you started this process. 2011, you bought the company. You must have had a whole bunch of roadblocks along the way.
We had a lot, yeah. I don't think we have time to cover them all, but we had 4 total owners. So I had to go raise money to go buy a company, and so we raised money. We raised it. There were 4 of us that were partners. We bought out the silent partners early on, and it was just a mismatch for us. And and we've had a lot. And we had a guy. Probably one of the saddest situations is we had a guy that was a really highly compensated salesperson that we hired from a competitor, and this is 6-7 years ago, and we brought him on board. He started doing great in sales, and then he called me maybe 6 months later and said, and he called me at night. And if an employee calls me at night, this is like 9 o'clock, I answer. Like, they usually don't call me then.
That's not usually good news, right?
No.
Yeah.
So I answered, and his name's Michael, and I said, "Hey, Michael." And he said, "Billy, I have bad news. I'm at the emergency room, and I have stage 4 glioblastoma cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I don't really know what to do." And he was married, had 5 kids, and so we spent time with the guy and prayed with he and his family and tried to talk through it. And we came around him. We gave him a lot of freedom and time to go try to recover from this. And they call it the Widowmaker. It's a terrible disease.
Oh.
And so he went through that. Our team members at our company gave their entire bonuses to his family. We did a fun run. We raised money. All great things from the culture. What we found out later is that he had also started a company on the side and was bidding against us using our own templates. And he was just 1 or 2% cheaper than us. And so we obviously fired him, and we got into a big argument and actually got in a lawsuit, which I hated. I never wanted to get into a lawsuit. It didn't ever go anywhere because the mediator came into they didn't want to meet with us in the same room, so we were in separate rooms. The mediator came in and said, "Guys, I hate to tell you this. This guy thinks that he's beat this disease. He hasn't beat it. My dad and best friend died of this. And it's going to come back." And unfortunately, it did come back. But that was several years later. And so in mediation, the mediator said, "I hate to tell you this. You're never going to get any money out of this. It's never going to be made, quote unquote, right of how you guys want this to look." We had to shut down an office in Nashville. We had to fire a guy that we brought him over from another company. I mean, it was a really bad scenario.
That's awful.
And so we fired him. He went on. He later passed away a few years ago, and a really, really sad story. But I remember looking at the mediator and our attorney and just saying, so we just have to swallow the bitter pill. There's no like fair solution, or like Shawna was saying, equitable or equal. There's no like, we've been wrong. This might tank our company. We had to fire a lot of, like, it was really bad.
Yes.
And the only solution we had was just to walk out of the courtroom and figure out, how do we go forward next? And how do we keep growing?
Your employees must have felt betrayed.
Totally betrayed. I mean, I think the feedback we heard from our employees was not about, man, he really wronged us. I can't believe he stole from us. It was the emotional pain. It was, people literally said, "We have wept for he and his family."
Yes.
And he turned around and stole from us. How can someone do that? And that's tough, man. We've got stories galore like that, which is brutal. You see the idea of entrepreneurship, I feel like, is overly publicized, or they don't show the hard side of when you run out of money, which we did our first year. And what they show are pictures of airplanes and Bentleys and all this stuff, and that may be the case, but that's not the reality. I mean, we're all business owners.
Yes.
Man, there are so many ugly things you deal with that my guidance counselor didn't tell me about, and you just got to figure out, how do you get through it?
Well, but so you had an experience with someone that just wasn't a good person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bottom line. But one thing I love about Cumberland is you hire people, and maybe because of this experience, who are good people. Your people are awesome.
They're amazing.
Human beings.
The best, yeah. One of our guys, Purnell Roberts, who is an amazing man.
I love Purnell.
Purnell's great. So Purnell's head of operations. He is, I recruited him for 5 years. And I remember the first interview where we didn't have a position for him. I just heard about how great he was, and actually heard about him from that sales guy that lied to us and stole from us.
That's ironic.
Yeah, very ironic.
Yes.
And so Purnell, when I first interviewed him, we were telling him about how we're plugged into this school called Atlanta Youth Academy over in Southeast Atlanta, and this thing called City of Refuge over on the west side of Atlanta. So these great organizations in town. And he asked me, he said, and I was telling him how important community is and giving back, and he just said, "So tell me more about, how do you guys pour into the community? What does that look like?" And I was shocked. I was like, I'm interviewing this guy, and he's asking me really invasive questions that are like heart questions. I am so impressed with this guy. And I remember that was the moment I said, I want Purnell on our team. Like, he is a great man, a great father, a great leader.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of guy we want.
Yeah. And that's just one example.
Yeah, one example. We have so many. We can't name all 170, unfortunately, but they're amazing.
And if Purnell's listening, he's going to get a big head. So you got to deal with that when you get back to the office.
That's right. Okay. He's got a big head, so I'll calm him down.
Okay. All right. You'll cut him down a couple notches, keep him in line. That's
right.
good. That's good. But y'all have grown, well, since I met you, 5-6 years ago, and you've now 170 people. So you've grown a lot. You've got different divisions now. How have you done the growth? How has that come about?
Yeah, so when we started, we were at like 13 people, and I was talking to a guy that owns another landscape company here in town. He bought it last year, and he was talking about just the past year and how hard it's been. But one of the things that he said that has been really helpful is he said, what's nice is when things are really hard, people still need landscaping, and I can go out and knock on doors and figure out how to get more landscaping. We were talking about other businesses we looked at, from specialized box manufacturing to bomb remediation to these very interesting businesses, and they're just much more complicated in generating business. But so for us, when we were small, didn't really know what we were doing, we just go knock on doors and we'd go cold call. And this is way before we knew Al, so we had no sophistication of how we were doing it. It was just brute force, and which is exhausting. But that's what we did for a long time. And as we grew organically, we just kept adding people. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, so many mistakes, and we still make them all the time. But we've grown. Back in March, we grew through acquisition. We acquired 3 different companies in Atlanta at the same time, which I wouldn't really recommend.
Yes.
And so we did that, and our team, again, has been incredible in integrating those companies. But we've tripled in size through those acquisitions, and it's been crazy, but we were so excited. And
we wanted to make sure Kim and Purnell could handle it, right?
That's right, yeah. Kim, Purnell, Cindy, Hillary. I mean, we have a huge team, and they're amazing, and they're carrying the full load of that, or most of that load. And so it's been organically just through cold calling and networking and working with you, Al, and learning how to do sales and not skip the pain chamber in the Sandler submarine. And that's been incredibly helpful. And it's been it's hard to think that's been 11 years.
Well, thanks for the plug. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
But in those 11 years, you got married. You have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So obviously, they're young.
Yes, very young, yeah.
How do you balance all that? Acquiring companies, growing a company, running a company, and you got a family with young kids.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I need to ask my counselor, I guess. I don't know how it's working. I have this executive coach. His name is Bob Lewis, and he's amazing. And Bob and I were talking this week, and one of the things that we were talking about is, for me, it's really easy to get lost in the grind. And the reality of being the CEO is the good news doesn't necessarily bubble up to me, but the really bad issues bubble up to me. And so I a lot of times I'm dealing with bad problems as opposed to good things. And that's fine, but that can be exhausting after 11 years, and that can just take a toll on you. And so one of the things that I was talking about with Bob, we've been incredibly blessed with our company growing, with having these amazing team members in so many ways. And I love my work. I love being an entrepreneur. I love growing the business. It's so much fun. But I find that my attention can so easily be pulled in that strong direction of running a business instead of being with our 3 kids and my wife. And that is really hard for me. And it's hard for me to be present with that. And so one of the things that Bob and I were talking about is, don't let the other blessings wrongly overshadow your greatest blessings. And so I think the idea of trying to have perspective about what are the things in front of me that are kind of the glass balls, if you will. If I drop them, they crack. And one of the things that are rubber balls, that if you drop them, they bounce. And, I love my work. It's great. The reality is it's a rubber ball. Even if it goes bankrupt, which I hope it doesn't do, it's probably still just a rubber ball. It'll be okay, but I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose my kids or my wife. And if in 20 years we run a huge landscape company, but I don't know my kids, they don't know me, my wife and I aren't doing well, that's not worth it. That's a problem.
I imagine, Shawna, you see that a lot, where it's the business owner, entrepreneur who's spending so much time at the office, and the family.
I love what you said, Billy. It's a really good way to stay out of my office, is to have that perspective.
I'm not saying I do it well. I'm saying that's what I'm hoping to do, and I'm trying to do that.
But you are, just having that idea, and I love that analogy that you said, what's the rubber ball and what's the glass ball, because you're right? Yeah. We can build another business. Can you build another successful marriage?
Nice.
No.
Nice. Good. Yeah, that's really good advice. You have your priorities in order. So I know you're a reader, and you've got a couple books that you would like to share the titles of with our listeners.
Love to,
favorites.
Yeah, and I'm actually I'm a huge Audible fan. I'm a terrible reader, but I listen to, in Atlanta we drive everywhere, and so I listen to books all the time.
Yes.
But there's one that I just finished called Managing Leadership Anxiety, and it's by a guy named Steve Cuss. And Steve's an Australian guy. I think he lives here in the States now. But the book was, for me, it was on point. It was very poignant in kind of what I'm experiencing right now. Nature of running a business, you have anxiety, you have stress.
Yes.
That's going to exist. And so how do you manage that? How do you manage that? And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's really bad.
How do you pronounce, or how do you spell the author's last name?
Steve Cuss, Stevecusss.
Cuss.
And the title is not a great title. Sorry, Steve. It's called Managing Leadership Anxiety. And
what's wrong with that title?
It's a little too descriptive, maybe not as creative.
Okay, all right.
But
Anyway.
He sold a bunch of books. I haven't, so good for him.
there you go.
But it felt like it had a lot of topics that were on point with just stuff you deal with as an owner of a business and what's it like.
Okay, good one. And any others?
Oh man, there are tons. I mean, a big book and system for us as a company years ago was something called Traction, and there's one called Get a Grip and Rocket Fuel. And they're all part of what is called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. Right. And I'm a huge EOS fan.
Are you?
So those were very pivotal in us in growing. I mean, this is probably 5 years ago, we took that method on full bore and said, we're going to have a visionary integrator, we're going to use this structure, and it's been great for us.
Excellent. So you have managed to grow Cumberland Landscape Group, but you've kept your culture. How do you think through that culture?
We've tried. I mean, one of the things, a buddy of mine, Ross Baird, wrote a book, and one of the things that he talked about in the book was he argued this idea of diversity, and not diversity from a public standpoint, but diversity from, in my opinion, both the left and the right side. And I thought it was a fascinating argument. And he said, from the left side, we want to be diverse because it's good for the world. Not everybody, I'm a white dude, so not everybody's a white dude out there. And so how do we do it so we look like the rest of the world looks and be representative of that? And then the right side argument is statistically, you actually do better financially if you have a more diverse company, because the reality is people want to do business with people that look like them, that they like, and not everybody looks like me that we do business with. And so I loved Ross's argument that it covered kind of both sides. I remember reading it and thinking, I don't have an argument for that. That's a really good point of view. And so we've taken that on, not as a look at us, we're great, we're doing this, but as, again, both sides, we want to be representative of the world and who's out there, and we also want to grow a really good business and be profitable.
Right.
And so I loved that argument, and so our leadership team and our company shows that.
Yes.
We try to be diverse, not for diversity's sake, but diverse because it's the right thing to do, and it's a better way to grow a business, in my opinion. And so that's part of our culture, is we want to be like that.
I love that. Yeah, well, dysfunctional companies often are dysfunctional because the boss, whoever the boss is, hires people like him or her, and then you have a bunch of people that think the same way, look the same way, act the same way, and that becomes dysfunctional.
Like groupthink. Yeah.
Good point. Well, this is Al Simon with Sandler, and we've been talking here on Simon Says Let's Talk Business on Business RadioX. We've been talking with Billy Van Eaton, the CEO, owner, and founder of Cumberland Landscape Group. So, Billy, same two questions I asked Shawna. First of all, what's the best advice you've ever received?
I think the best advice I've received goes back to that comment about blessings, about kind of having perspective on what's important, what's a glass ball, what's a rubber ball. I don't do a great job of that. Again, it's advice. It's not necessarily what I'm doing daily. I think something else that I'm thinking a lot about right now is my identity, is like, where do I find my identity? Is it in my work? Is it in my family? Is it in friends? Is it in, where is it? And I think it's a question that it's important for us to always be asking, because our identity can so easily be stolen and given to something else that doesn't actually have that value.
Yes.
And so I think that's something that I'm thinking a lot about, is where is my identity and what's a healthy, safe place for that?
Yes. Well, I think it's healthy that you recognize that you're not, you haven't mastered all these things, right? So so I think that's the first step anyway, right? And that you're asking these questions is awesome. And then, Billy, what's the best advice you would give our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is I say this to myself. So in my basement in my house, I have a man cave. I won't even call it an office, but I've got these dry erase boards down there. That's kind of like a beautiful mind. And and I love to write stuff out there.
Do you really?
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I have written, again, it's not something I do well. I'm a really harsh critic of myself. And the reality of one of the things that book, Managing Leadership Anxiety, talks about is leadership. And there are always definitions of leadership. And he argues, and I really like this thought, he's like, if leadership is going someplace you don't know and you haven't been before, then leadership is somehow moving into a place you don't know, but courageously doing that and trying to bring people along with you. And I feel like as founder and CEO of a company, it's like, that's what we're doing. I've never been here before. Tomorrow is going to bring a new set of problems that today didn't have. And so I think that's kind of that. Be kind to yourself when you make these mistakes. Again, we're going to make a ton of mistakes. And I beat myself up, and I'm sure you guys do too. But how do we be kind to ourselves? And that's really hard. And so that would be my advice: is try to be kind to yourself. Try to be graceful with yourself. Again, I don't do it well, and I don't do it well with others, but that would be my biggest advice. Great advice.
And Billy, we haven't really talked a lot about Cumberland and what you actually do for your customers. But I know that your work you all do is quality work. Mm-hmm. And so if our listeners would want to get a hold of Cumberland Landscape, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so the best way is through our website or our phone number. So our website, very descriptive, it's cumberlandlandscapegroup.com, Cumberland like Cumberland Mall or Cumberland Gap or Cumberland River. So cumberlandlandscapegroup.com, or our main phone number is 404-352-9393.
Excellent. Okay, so 404-352-9393.
That's it.
Or a website, cumberlandlandscapegroup.com. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Al.
Yeah, so Billy Van Eaton, the CEO and owner of Cumberland Landscape Group, and Shawna Woods, the managing partner of Atlanta Divorce Law Group. Y'all have been awesome, and thank you so much for being here, for sharing your advice with our listeners. And I know our listeners are going to want to contact you because it's good stuff. And so, as always, we're going to conclude the show today with a sales tip. We call it the Ask Al segment of the show. And our listeners can send me questions on sales or sales management if you want to get them answered here on the air. And so if you have a question on sales or sales management that you want answered on the air, send it to my email address, al.simon@sandler.com. al.simon@sandler.com. And I've chosen this one for today. A listener sent in this question, which is, how do you handle a prospect who is looking for a discounted price? Well, I haven't met too many prospects who aren't looking for a discounted price. So, yeah, this is a pretty common one. And most salespeople cave. They do. Most salespeople identify with the prospect because when salespeople go out to buy things, they want to get a low price. And so when the prospect asks for a lower price, they go, well, yeah, that makes sense. Let me see if I can get you a lower price. This is the age-old problem in sales because business owners, right, law firm owners, principals, I mean, you're one part of your job is to, as a principal, is to keep the profit margins somewhere near where they need to be for everybody to make a living. And so if we all went around discounting our services, it would be a train wreck. We wouldn't be around long. And, of course, from a salesperson standpoint, if you're on any variable compensation, you're going to make less money yourself. So why in the world would you identify with the customer and have empathy for their request for a discounted price? Having said that, I would also say this, good for the customer to ask. Right? They're being a good steward of their resources, so good for them. Good job. We, on the other hand, in sales, we need to be good stewards of our resources. And so you hear about this win-win thing and negotiations and all that. But bottom line, this is really a mindset issue in the salesperson's mind. And so I'm going to give you a couple things you could say when the prospect asks for a discounted solution. And I'm going to give you one thing you shouldn't say. That's probably even better advice. So what we shouldn't say, I'll start with that one, is, well, are you comparing apples to apples? Think about that one. All right, so if they get 3 bids, and that's common in your world, I know, Billy, they get 3 bids, and they say, well, maybe they say to Billy's salesperson, well, you're coming in about 15% higher than the other bids. Can you help us out here? And of course, the salesperson is thinking, because it's a fairly complex quote. Maybe there's landscape, there's design in there, there's maintenance, there's different terms, there's all kinds of stuff, right? So there's different things in the quote, and so the salesperson wants to say, well, are you comparing apples to apples? But you think about, if you say that to a prospect, what you're basically doing is you're telling them they're stupid, right? And they may be, but you're not doing yourself any favors by asking that question. It never works. It never works. And so I would suggest you stay away from that. Just stay away from that. Do not say that. But instead you can say, hey, Shawna, it sounds like you're unable to come up with the full investment for the scope of the project. Is that a fair statement? So you think about that question. It sounds like you're not able to come up with the full investment for the project. Is that a fair statement? Well, the prospect can answer a lot of different ways, but however they answer, it's going to tell you a lot, right? Because they might say, well, I can't come up with a full investment, but I can get it cheaper elsewhere. And then again, if that happens, pay close attention to the words they use, because they use the word cheaper. They're not really focused on quality, are they? Right? So, and so this is where you might have to say, you know what? We're probably not your best option if you're looking for cheaper. Because think about it. Let's suppose you do come down in your price and you do win the deal. And then renewal time comes around, or another project comes around. Or in Shawna's world, they give you a referral to somebody else who is looking for a cheap price, right, a cheap rate to pay the attorney. Well, I mean, when does that stop? As soon as you cave on the first one, it never stops, right? You've set the precedent, right? So you really can't do that. But if you say it sounds like you're unable to come up with the full investment, is that a fair statement? Then a great conversation can follow, depending on how they respond to it. And then you can always suggest that you cut it up into pieces. What part of the solution can wait until next budget period? Do a phase-in approach. We call it a monkey's paw. But so let me tell you a story about that. So I had a prospect who, we did the pain. We did a good job in the pain. You'll be proud of us, Billy. Did a good job of the pain, and we came up with a full scope and the investment for that. And they said they could handle that. And we got down to making the decision, and they said, Al, some things have happened lately, and we're not sure that we can handle the full scope. So can we talk about, what can you give? I think the exact words were, can you help us out here? Which is code for, we want the full scope, but we want to pay less, right? So I said, yeah, I can help you out. What part of
It's the friends and family discount.
That's what they're looking. The Ask Al, the discount. So I said, yeah, we can certainly reduce the investment. What part of the scope do you want to save for another time? Which, of course, wasn't what they wanted to hear. But we did talk about, what could wait till later. And then they said, could you write that up for us? I said, sure. And then they said this. They said, could you write it up for us and also include the original proposal, full scope, full price? So I did that. So I had an updated proposal, full scope, full investment, and lower scope, lower investment. And guess which one they picked?
The higher one.
Full scope.
They did. You both knew it. Yeah, they picked full scope, full investment. Why? Because of the pain. That's exactly why we don't skip talking about pain. So forget your features and benefits. Engage your prospects in conversations about pain, and you'll have an easier time handling the question, hey, I'd like a little help on the price. And that's our tip for today. This is Al Simon with Sandler. Simon says, let's talk business on Business RadioX. Thank you, Shawna. Thank you, Billy. And our listeners, everybody, as usual, good selling.